And we're live.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the meeting. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda for this meeting, July 8th, Economic Development Advisory Committee. Are there any changes? If not, if I could have a mover and a seconder for the agenda, please. Emily, move. Seconder. I have a seconder for the motion. Megan, thank you. And are there any conflicts of interest? And the general nature thereof? Okay, we'll move on. Approval of the minutes from the June 3rd meeting of the Economic Development Advisory Committee. They were attached to your agenda. If there are no changes or comments, could I have a mover to approve the minutes, please? Emily, thank you. Seconder? I will. And then item 4.2 is friendly amendments to the March 14th and April 1st minutes. This is on behalf of the mayor. He had declared a conflict of interest, and this is there for your information only. We don't have any delegations this morning that I'm aware of. Ben?
Nope.
No. So we'll go right into the municipal update. So take it away, Ben.
Sure. Luckily, I've got lots of help today. Mr. Paul Walsh, our Director of Planning, is going to give a bit of a snapshot into the CIP and what he and his staff have been working on. If you remember, back in earlier in the year, we sort of outlined it and had a conversation within this group, and they've kind of taken it a little bit further. Can't divulge too much because there has not been a report to council yet. That is scheduled for the fall at some juncture. So Paul's just going to give a little insight on that. And then Caroline is here again with us, our summer intern, and she's got a few items to report on as well. So I'll let Paul go ahead, and that way, if he wants to get on with his day after, he can do so.
Ready? Do you have the option of sharing the screen, Ben? Can people see my screen?
Yep, looks good, Paul.
Okay. So focus of the community improvement plan, the initiative of it as a motion councilor was to initiate something that we can deal with some of the brownfield sites. And in particular, Emily Rowley, member of council and member of the Economic Development Committee, had recalled that there had been some significant background work and preparation towards a brownfield, what we call a CIP, or community improvement plan. And so thankfully we then found that. So Emily, thank you for being our corporate memory. And we put together some resources accordingly, but what we've been working on is developing the plan, brownfields, and there's first draft has been completed. Just going through some of the details and working on a second draft, but looking pretty good. And it's a quality-based document, and I'll just give some further description of it. So what is a community improvement plan? So it doesn't necessarily need to apply specifically to brownfield sites, but what we usually call a CIP, and it's a tool used by municipalities to authorize the expenditure of funds in the form of grants or loans or waiving of fees and deferral of taxes for the purposes of achieving public interest gains or objectives. That's in general, and they can be either to solve problems like brownfields, or they can be used to advance opportunities, as we've seen in some other municipalities, and that's another chapter on that. But it's allows municipality to generally be able to expend funds on incenting development of lands that's otherwise prohibited under the Municipal Act. So Section 28 of the Planning Act gives that special power or authority to councils in providing those incentives to achieve public interest. What are brownfield sites? Brownfield sites are pretty much what I think everyone characterizes them to be or perceives them to be. It's vacant, underutilized properties, buildings that are viewed as being environmentally contaminated by way of historical, commercial, industrial uses. So that makes it problematic for development because now you have some very major front-end costs associated with its development. And oftentimes brownfield sites are really now in core areas or key areas of a municipality that lend themselves more so to more mixed use developments. So there might be some commercial still, but they also will be desirable places for residential. There might be more intensification type opportunities too. So for example, a single story large manufacturing plant that's been abandoned may be very beneficial to have 3 or 4 story building with retail bottom and residential or office above. So those are the kind of opportunities that are really meant to be promoted through a brownfield CIP program. And here's just an example. So they can vary from small sites to large sites. Here you think of factories, but things like dry cleaners or gasoline stations are also some key areas that might be subject to brownfield development opportunities. Dry cleaners use certain chemicals that are particularly lingering and nasty in the groundwater and things like that. So making cleanup costs more expensive than gas stations. We can imagine what kind of costs involved in those redeveloped. And they represent a lost property tax revenue to the municipalities. So as long as these things are deferred and abandoned, up till recently there was a vacant industrial tax class and then vacant commercial tax class. I don't recall what the municipality of Brighton Council have done, but municipalities were given the option of no longer having those tax classes, that if you were industrial and you paid full market value and were taxed accordingly. Same with vacant commercial. Maybe members of this committee can maybe advise me better than I recall, but I think our council has elected to abandon those tax classes for the vacant portion. But historically, because of that tax class, vacant commercial and vacant industrial, there was some significant tax losses to the municipality. And of course, they also represent some health issues. These contaminated sites, the contamination plumes can emanate far off site from where it originated. So this is a persistent problem. So it's in a more of a collective interest that we clean these things up, both economic and for I alluded to the challenges of redevelopment. So there's unknowns about the site. How contaminated is it? There's some sites that the Ministry of Environment will continue to monitor by way of test wells and soil samples, that sort of thing. Kui property in town is one of them. I think MOE, Ministry of Environment, continues to monitor that site to some extent, but oftentimes unknown what contaminants are on a site, and that significant obstacles. So sometimes it's desirable just to get those first steps going, get some tests going. Sometimes we can be surprised and to realize they aren't as bad as feared. And sometimes an incentive to get those studies done is what's needed to be the catalyst for redevelopment. Well, what kind of potential incentives are being looked at or being permitted under various legislations? So we can have a program where we actually pay for the actual rehabilitation. I mentioned I should back up, but maybe the first level of support would be to do the studies. So to convert from an industrial use to a more sensitive land use, typically residential, you need to do your record of site condition under the Environmental Protection Act. That involves stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So stage 1, is it contaminated? Is there a risk? If yes, stage 2, start doing some testing. How bad is it? What kind of concentrations are there? What parameters are exceeding health limits? And then stage 3, we do some cleanup and rehabilitate the site. And then you can register your record of site condition, and then the banks will get friendly with you to give you lending for the development of your property. So what we can do and consider under a CIP program is maybe provide some grants or loans to help with those initial studies. I mean, better know what we're dealing with on a site. And second, we can, in stage 2, we can help find some actual site testing and examinations, more detailed. And 3, we can actually help with cleanup through grants or loans. So there's 3 stages that the CIP can actually be targeted. And then that's some front-end money, but then there is long-term money. So we can do a waiving of municipal portion of tax increase resulting from redevelopment. For example, every tax bill has a municipal component, county component, and school board component, and some special purpose body component to it. The municipal component, say it's about 50% of every tax bill. And when we see a site paying $10,000 a year in taxes as a brownfield, and then post-development is going to pay $50,000 in taxes per year, that's a 40%. That's a $40,000 increase per year. If the municipal portion is 50%, well, now we can relieve $20,000 a year in taxation. And council will need to choose a time frame, whether that's for 3 years, for 5 years. I think in the regulations, it goes up to 10 years. So if it were to 10 years at savings of $20,000 a year, that's $200,000 savings for the developer who's willing to on that onto that project. We can also forgive development charges. So $5,000 a dwelling unit. So if the project has 50 or 100 units, that really adds up. And building permit fees can also be waived. Planning Act application fees can also be waived. So that's can really add up. One particular project in Kingston, when brownfields were first initiated by the province, and Kingston was very quick off the mark. One development on the waterfront, it is a large high-rise condo, but that developer saved about $300,000, some of which was tax deferrals, and those condo owners were getting about an $800 check per I think per year for the tax savings, and that just ended a few years ago for some of those living in that condo development. Lastly, we can consider direct grants or loans. So loans might be of interest. There's a complication, of course, creation of loans, and there's risk associated with the loans, but loans in some areas are considered preferable because, one, we can leverage more funds towards our objectives, but also loans can be viewed under certain regulations of the Municipal Act. I think under local improvement areas charges, they get viewed as income, not as an actual municipality, and as such, then it's beneficial to the taxpayer in general when we make a loan and it's not coming from the tax base. Grants, of course, and waiving of development charges and waiving of other fees, that would have to come from elsewhere in our budget and generally be supported by the tax. So I guess I've kind of jumped ahead here a little bit. I've talked about the different phases of the environmental site assessment, remedial action plans, and that third bullet, site-specific risk assessment. Usually after doing a stage 2, when you realize that, yes, you have a contaminated site, but hey, you know what, it's close to meeting MOE parameters for health risk, but not quite, then there's risk mitigation measures that can be sometimes accepted, which is a much more cost-effective way to deal with these sites. Risk assessment approaches might mean a clay barrier cap on the ground, no basements, this sorts of thing. But not all sites lend itself to that. If they're hydrocarbonated sites, sometimes it's just not going to work, given some of the chemistry involved. And when I mentioned about the tax incentives, about cancellation of 100% of the municipal portion of the taxes, that's 50%. We can approach the county level and school board levels. They can also participate in the CIP program. I don't know if I know County of Northumberland, for example, would be really big on affordable housing and supports for affordable housing. They've included some recognition of that in their development charges bylaw. So they might be willing partners to come on with a CIP program if the rehabilitation of a brownfield site involved some affordable housing. In which case, I'm not sure what the county portion of the levy, maybe around 15%, 12%. But that can be very significant too, depending on the nature of the development. And I made reference to the legislative authority. It's the Planning Act and Municipal Act. Specific under Section 3 of the Planning Act, there's the issuance of ministers' provincial policy statements, and every municipal planning authority must make decisions that are consistent with those policy statements. And every planning staff report needs to show justification for the development in the context of Section 3 of the Planning Act. Those sets of statements, policy statements. In particular, Section 171 of that comprehensive set of policy statements makes particular reference to encouraging the redevelopment of brownfield. There is some strong provincial direction to support a brownfield program. And I made reference to Section 28. That's the specific section on the Planning Act that authorizes municipalities to adopt community improvement plans. And I'll go for more to that in a bit, just some of the steps involved. And on the Municipal Act, there's that cited section that refers to the ability to waive or defer cancellation or tax deferrals. So steps. We have our first draft CIP policies that will have to be put in the framework of an official plan amendment. And then we would be looking at a CIP budget. Some of those grants or loans or waiving of fees, deferrals of taxes, all have other reverberations throughout the budget. So we have to work on what kind of upset limits or thresholds that we want to apply to different types of incentives. And Ben will be helping us with those best approaches. And then council will be looking at a CIP project bylaw. So Section 28 of the Planning Act says once we get our policy framework in place, then in some budget, then we start to passing bylaws on a project by project basis. So that means we may not use all of the available budget if the adequate projects don't come forward. Council will authorize that expenditure and that particular project through a specific CIP project bylaw. And once done, then we will be able to process development applications accordingly and track the budget that's been assigned to that. So that's where we're at in a nutshell. Well, just as an aside, we're also working on some other components of the CIP. I think maybe we can expect some things on affordable housing, and hoping that we can also maybe take a look at on-farm diversified uses. So I haven't, and maybe this would be of interest to Ben. We haven't discussed it too much. We've identified it in our casual conversations, Ben, but we haven't really articulated some of the details in there. But I'm hoping that maybe we can also be promoting some farm-based tourism, farm-based production of cheese or other farm-based products, and perhaps do that through some incentives in the CIP program. So that's it in a nutshell. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
That's great. Thanks, Paul.
I have a question if I can. Paul, thank you very much for this information. I was just wondering about a timeline for this, and also will the CIP plan include a component for marketing and promoting this or creating awareness of it in some way?
Good questions, Libby. So we're looking at September. I think we can probably get it out. Like I said, we have the first draft done. So I think looking at our agendas for July and August, they're already full with certain other planning issues. But our strategic plan is looking at September to get it to council, and that would be concurrent with some of our budget discussions, our initial budget discussions. So we're looking at September to get the draft official plan amendment to the council, and then we will probably public notice, statutory public notice as required on the Planning Act, and then refined policies based on the feedback we get from the public. And in terms of promoting, I think given that our brownfield sites are fairly easily identified, it might make sense that we approach those landowners specifically, saying, hey, we've got this program. We have limited budget, and so we're really encouraging those who have identified brownfield sites to make that first initiation in the program. We may want to look for the low-hanging fruit so we can promote the program and show first early successes of it. But that'll be a good question, and like Ben and myself and other staff are probably going to give that more thought, and any assistance that way would be appreciated.
We just to add to that, Paul, we're fortunate, right? Like with our partners at QEDC, this is just another tool in the toolkit for them to promote the region with. Not that they maybe have direct contact with these property owners all the time, but if there's someone sort of kicking tires on Brighton and they know of it, it's just something else that they can showcase that we can offer to them.
Sure.
So utilizing those partners will be huge when promoting this program. But like you say, Paul, like there's probably going to be years, maybe not the first year, maybe not the second year, but there's probably going to be a time when we're just going to have to say, we've actually used up all our budgeted resources for this year. You're going to have to wait to apply till next year. So
right. Ideally, that would be the case, that it's so popular that we run out of money. I am aware of some municipalities, they develop these programs and there's very, very slow uptake. Then after slow uptake, some municipalities I'm aware of, with time going on, even staff forget they have a program.
Right.
And until somebody with some Pecuniary comes forward and say, hey, how about that program that council adopted 10 years ago? And it's still in the books. But because it wasn't promoted, it wasn't an active program, and it wasn't overly supported. So, Libby's point, I think it'd be good to have some feet on the ground on this and make sure there's good engagement. And we'll have to give that some more good thought and effort.
I think too, engagement with the realtors if the properties are for sale, just to create an awareness there, and prominence on our website as well, so that none of us forget whether it's,
Yes.
that would certainly be a first step for developers, would be to check or potential buyers or land developers to check the website. And if that's there, then that's something that none of us will forget. So that's great. Thank you.
There is one developer that we've had some discussions with who's interested in one of the key brownfield properties. So I think we'll have some, I'm hoping to have some quick video on the program.
Great. Any
Emily?
Yes, thank you. May I ask a question? Good presentation, Paul. Glad to see we're finally moving along with these incentives. As far as the amendment for the official plan, will it be specifically for just the brownfield remediation portion of this, or and if so, when will part B and C as far as maybe affordable housing? And I know we also spoke about downtown revitalization at some point. Will that come later, or will that all be part of an all-encompassing amendment?
I'm hoping to do as an all-encompassing amendment. So we're working on those other components now. The brownfield component was a priority, so that first draft is really complete. But I'm hoping to have those other components too within the policy framework of the official plan amendment. And then after that, depending on budget, we can have specific project bylaws. And in more general policy, and I think again in the fall, there's a fees and charges bylaw that's fairly polished and draft as well. It has been for some time actually, but want to see that coincide with the CIP program. Council's so interested in the idea is to have opportunity for people to actually apply for a CIP project, and so it's part of an application process, and they may need to justify, if it's going to reach outside the scope of the OPA, CIPs, or touch on projects that haven't been addressed in our budget, things like that. Then I'd like to also make it an opportunity in policy for someone who comes forward with a really good, desirable public program or project that we haven't thought of. And if they can show a good cost benefit to the community, and then I'd like to be open to innovation coming from outside. So there'll be some intended loose ends within the policy framework and in our fees and charges bylaw to incent innovation.
Thank you for that.
Are there any other questions for Paul? Go back to Ben. Oh, Laura,
Hello.
did you have a question?
No, the
Okay.
internet here just keeps kicking me right out.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Ben?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I guess we'll kick it over to Caroline for a few updates as well.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all this morning. I just have a quick few things I've been working on that I wanted to update everyone on. I'll start with social media. I'm continuing with the 6 campaigns I talked about last time we met, and then addition, we're rolling out 2 new kind of summer-based campaigns. The first one is going live tonight. It's a weekend guide, and it'll be posted once a week, and it's just a collection of businesses or activities or restaurants to try in Brighton, kind of like those bang for your buck posts I talked about last time, tagging a lot of businesses, getting a lot of engagement and getting people aware of what they can do in Brighton. So the first one tonight will be Biking Brighton. So all of the trails and routes we have to offer, which I think will go over well because we have such a huge biking community and we're such a huge destination for cyclists. We also have the Staycation Destination campaign that we'll be rolling out. That's kind of like whenever we can. We have a lot of really cool places that are opening up, especially kind of boutique Airbnbs, and the opening of Spinnaker Suites is obviously huge for us. So I ran one, I think 2 weeks ago with the tiny house. Some of you may have seen it. Ben and I were lucky enough to go and meet Mindy, who owns it, and she was lovely. So we were happy to give her a little bit of a plug on our social media, and it went over really well. So we're going to continue with that campaign. We launched Town Trivia. I know I spoke a little bit about that last time we met. That's a partnership with the Brighton Digital Archives, and it's gone over really well. A lot of positive response from the community, huge engagement, and again, throwing out our local history, which I think is really important. And that's going to continue throughout the summer. We have content planned from now until the end of August. Some other projects, we've launched the Bites of Brighton contest. We just launched it through social media, but we have follow-up kind of campaigns going on the radio, newspaper, and I'll continue to promote it on our social media channels just so it's out there. We're reaching as many people as we can. This afternoon, I'm meeting with Ashley from the DBIA. Emily reached out and was interested in us meeting with her and seeing if we could increase social media presence for the downtown area. And I have a few things that we can do on the municipality end just to make sure that we're also promoting the downtown area too. The shop local graphics I showed last time are being installed later this week. Wayne Jefferson is going to be putting those up, which is exciting. It's going to be installed at the Presqu'île location. So hopefully we're getting lots of traffic from the park and we can send some people up to the downtown businesses. Ben and I are working on a Brighton business card, we're calling it. This was kind of discussed last time about bringing business to Brighton, and we've come up with this idea of creating kind of a snapshot of Brighton in a document that could be sent out through email, just kind of highlighting the main kind of sectors of Brighton where you can do business, you know, what living here is like, and all the other kind of amenities that Brighton has. So I'm focusing kind of on the graphic design and layout of it, and then Ben's going to fill in the content. So that'll be great to get going on and get out, and a great resource, I think. And then finally, I'm just working on updating the wayfinding signage in the town. So Ben has me visiting all the little red posts with all the little lists of businesses and just going through them and, you know, seeing what's missing because some of our businesses aren't on there, and we think it's probably a good thing to get them on there just so people know where they're going when they come to visit us. And that's pretty much it for me.
Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, the signage isn't like a budgeted item or anything right now, but with having the extra hands here right now, I figure it's a useful exercise to at least have an exact inventory of where we're at and where we could go with a wayfinding signage program, whether it's a whole new concept or whether it's updating those particular locations. I don't know. That could be in this budget cycle, that could be in a whole new term of council. I'm not sure, but I want to be ready for it and having, you know, an exact feel of what we're doing. There's so many different things you can do. Every community is a little bit different in how they handle it. I really like the Quinte West model. So I don't know. We'll see where that goes, but Caroline definitely doing some background work for me there. Just a few things from me before we get to our partners. The industrial park sign is a complicated thing. We've had a lot of things happen in the last month. So I got out to Loyalist Drive for my site meeting, and we discovered that the Loyalist Drive infrastructure in the public works planning, roads planning sort of outlook is that Loyalist Drive is probably going to be done next year. So the idea of installing a sign at the side of Loyalist Drive might not be the best idea to do that this summer. So what we've done is we will be updating the sign that directs people into the industrial park on the other side of the road at a much lesser fee than the business listing sign. And we're going to put that project on hold until the completion of that road. Because there could be, widening, there's going to be all sorts of construction vehicles and different things going on. And anytime, there's a major project going on. So we've decided on that outlook for now. So I think Friday, the old sign will be coming down, and then hopefully next week, the new sign will be going up. We're going to trim back all those trees that seem to be encroaching on that sign. It's a much more vibrant new sign look. So hopefully it helps a little bit. And then hopefully 2022, we're getting actual businesses listed on the sign that I shared with you earlier this spring. Working on a whole bunch of projects with Bay Quinte Regional Marketing Board. We have an LGBT plus working group that is working on making sure that we're an inclusive, safe community for all, and the things that we can do to promote those things, the things to be cognizant of, and making sure that tourism in this region is for everyone. So that's been a really interesting experience. Bay of Quinte Regional Marketing Board for the last, I'd say 2 years, COVID kind of put a damper on it for a little while, but we're back again, has really headed up a concept called experiential tourism. And I actually, when I first started in Brighton, went to a kind of a conference retreat concept called Ignite up in North Bay area. And it was all based on how experiential tourism can really affect getting people to come and into your community, whether it's hyper local or whether it's kind of the more traditional tourism. So what we've done, they've hired a consultant. We've had a couple working group meetings so far. We've compiled a list of businesses from all the regional partners. I've probably got close to 20 businesses on our Brighton list, and we're gonna start feeling people out, seeing what they can do to offer a little bit more experience to what they're already doing within their business. A great example of this is just yesterday, Caroline was actually down taking photos of Firing Time Pottery. They had a little bit of a kind of, I don't know what you'd want to call it, a demo or a do-it-yourself in the park with kids and their own pottery projects. I know Megan does stuff like this. She did the Easter egg kits, more of a virtual thing, but once we can get sort of in person again, like that's just a great example. Cheryl Delorme down at Special Effects does this all the time with her cooking classes. So there's already a lot of this going on, but there's a really conscious effort being made by Bay Quinte Tourism to make this region an experience based market, not just somewhere you can go and stay and go golfing and ride your bike. We want people doing things. We want people getting involved in the businesses, making those connections. I took part in a really interesting film kind of webinar that was put on by Tourism Kingston, and they were kind of describing how they organize film permits and different productions being filmed within the Kingston region. And we might, obviously, I don't want to compare, Brighton to Kingston and all the things like the Penitentiary and Springer Market Square that they attract all these different production opportunities. But between the region of Brighton, Quinte West, Belleville, and now Napanee, there is quite a bit of interest in different landmarks in our community. So, are we ready if someone comes to us and says, I really want to get a day of production in our downtown? No, we have no idea. Like, you know, so getting an understanding of film production permits, road closures, you know, putting people in line with accommodations, like all of those things kind of are conversations that were had in that webinar, and that's going to kind of continue on into the fall. So kind of just making sure we're ready for all those kinds of things. We haven't had a film production in Brighton since I think 2004. There was something shot at the park, at the Presqu'île Park, but they're a little more common than you think. Port Hope and Coburg have had a few in the recent years. Kingston has had Murdoch Mysteries, has been pretty much filmed there. I don't know if you're familiar with CBC programming, but it's a pretty big show. I had to research it a little bit myself, but they've actually been filming exclusively there since like 2017, which is really, really interesting. So just another little project we're working on. Megan and Emily know a little bit about this as well, but we're working on a promotional project, or a promotional video, which is a partnership with Bay of Quinte and the municipality and the DBIA. We're all kind of pitching in some money. DBIA was successful getting some grant money for it, and we've actually met with the videographer. We've got production dates of July 28th and 29th now. Weather depending. We think we can get it all done in a day, but we left 2 dates for weather. Myself, Caroline, I think Councillor Rowley, Wayne, we're all going to make ourselves available to help out and get this set up, whether we need extras or actors or whatever the case may be. So really exciting. It's going to be somewhere around a 45 to 90 second montage, sort of really sizzle kind of video that's going to promote our downtown exclusively. So obviously we won't be able to get in every single store, won't be able to get into every single restaurant or every single sort of experience or opportunity that there is in the downtown, but we're going to do our best between our really talented videographer, Victor Cooper is this gentleman's name, to make sure that all things are captured in our downtown. And it'll just be an unbelievable piece of marketing collateral that we'll have for digital purposes for a long time. And then hopefully as time goes on and that one becomes a little outdated, we continue on these projects now that we've kind of done it once and now that we kind of know the cost. And I think this could really be really, really cool and something different for the municipality and the DBIA. I've actually purchased some radio and digital ads through Starboard Communications. So hitting a bit of a different market than just the hyper local that we do 12 months a year in My FM in Brighton. But so this one's going to be on 95.5 and Cool 100. It's a 4-week campaign, 60 to 30 second ads. We get 120 of those per week. And then there's a digital component to that. So when you go on and you see an article on, say, your Facebook or your Twitter, and you hit in Quinte News, and you go to your article, well, there's going to be a Brighton logo that's going to pop up that's going to take us to our Brighton business page directly. So that's kind of what you get out of the digital component of buying advertising with a bigger company like Starboard. So we're quite excited about that campaign to kind of make even more exposure to Brighton. Yeah, and that's about it for me right now. Our vacancies for our committee are going to the July 19th council meeting for appointment. The June meeting was just too packed, and we've moved it to July, which isn't a big deal. So hopefully we'll have our new members for the fall.
So thanks, Ben. I was wondering about I'm looking for it here now. I can't remember what it was called, but the exchange visit.
Yep.
But Napanee, how is that? Was it Napanee? It was Napanee, right?
Yes. So I actually just filled out an agreement on that. We're all set to go. we have pinpointed the month of August throughout August for our visits back and forth. So we can kind of coordinate that through email, and we can, I can get you all of the there's kind of it is a bit of a long-winded forms to fill out and feedback forms to fill out as you visit. So I don't know if I suggest that everyone carry around a clipboard of like, taking all these notes. It might look a little obvious, but if you can kind of just maybe write notes in your phone, or you can, keep things top of mind, and then sort of sit down or at a cafe or at lunch and maybe jot some stuff down later might be the way to go. But there is an extensive sort of feedback thing, and what you saw, what you felt, that everyone will have to return to me and Caroline to develop the presentation that we'll have to give Napanee on what we found. But certainly August was kind of the time frame. We wanted to make sure restrictions were pretty open before we ventured into the visit, and I think we're on that right track. So I'll follow up on that program with an email in the next, maybe by the kind of the third week in July, and give everyone concrete times. Maybe we can come up with a plan. Are we doing it as a group? Are we doing it sort of individually on our own time? Maybe take your partner, take a friend, whatever you'd like to do. But we can work through that. But it is all set to go for sure.
Are there any questions for Ben? Okay, that's a great report, Ben. So we'll move on now to the DBIA update with Megan.
Hello. Not a lot to report, actually. The municipality report covered quite a few of our talking points. Like, the Bay of Quinte grant going towards, and the DBIA putting money towards the video. We had formed a subcommittee to discuss kind of how we would like to go about that. But obviously, like, Ben, you've been in contact with Wayne, and he's reached out to you for several things. Like, I think he wants, I don't know if he emailed you, but he said he was going to, about decorating the vacant properties for winter. That was something that was on our follow-up list there. But other than that, we talked about our maps, because, we put out those little maps that we hand out to all the businesses and whatnot. So we're updating them currently, and our members list as well, because it needed some updating, especially since COVID. We got a bunch of new businesses, which I don't think anybody really expected. So they have to be added to our members list and thusly updated to the maps. But we're only producing the maps at half quantity, because there's not as much walking traffic as there would be if there wasn't a pandemic. Other than that, we did discuss our AGM, which has been put off for quite some time, because people want to have, we want to have a in-person one rather than a virtual one. So September is kind of being slated as the time for the AGM. Yeah, there really wasn't a whole lot. I'm just like, those are the notes I took at the last meeting. Just looking at our agenda now. There's a few follow-ups, but nothing really to bring before the economic development meeting. I mean, unless I'm missing something, Emily.
I don't think you're missing too much.
No, it was a
Megan,
short.
it was
a short one.
Yeah, we were done pretty quickly.
Hasty.
Yeah, just to kind of say, just to follow up on Ben's comment regarding the filming with Bay of Quinte. Lucky for us, timing as well, DBIA is meeting tonight. So
yeah,
we will be discussing that whole film project, the video project tonight. So we should have some good discussion for the next time.
You're on that subcommittee, aren't you, Emily?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah. Myself and Wayne and Ashley attended the meeting with Doug and Ben and Victor. Did you say his name was Ben? Yeah. So Yeah, well, it went well, a lot of good discussion, but I think good ideas will come from our DBIA board tonight.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was
Nope,
just gonna add that kind of the thought process is a shared doc that DBIA is gonna start with on some shots, and then they'll send it over to me, and I'll kind of add maybe a couple ideas, and then Victor will take it and run his magic with it.
So I have a question on that. I'm not really sure where it comes up. I was going to bring it up under new business, but I think maybe now might be a good time. I was shopping in downtown Brighton yesterday, and in the retailer where I was, there was a sign on the counter that said, due to new municipal, something like this, new municipal regulations, we can no longer keep your packaging. So if you bought a product that was in a box or had a lot of paper or something like that, normally they would have taken it and recycled it. But now they can't. So I asked what was happening and was told that the size of the bin that you would normally see in a residential area or for your home is all that they are allowed to fill to recycle. And knowing that the municipality would want to promote recycling, I'm just wondering if that is in fact what's happening, and I don't really know who to ask on that one. So I don't know, but Paul or Ben or Emily with the, Megan with the downtown, is it for all businesses or just the downtown?
Emily, does the county runs our garbage program, correct?
The county runs the garbage program.
Yeah.
The county, and I think there's an agreement between the municipal. Yeah, they do, just like today. They're picking up garbage today, right?
Right.
So I'm not really sure, Libby, where that has come from. I understood if you have one bin, you can have two bins. If you can't, if one's not enough, you can fill another one, but you need to connect with the county to get a second bin as far as cardboard and recyclables go. I am not familiar with that comment or that kind of rule at this stage. I know recycling has been, if it's put out on garbage day as it is now, I should say I was downtown as well yesterday, and we have both garbage and recycling cans side by side. And I know the municipality picks up the garbage off the street, I believe twice a week, I think Mondays and Fridays. However, the recycling gets left behind as far as the one blue recycling bin was to overflowing. So I will maybe highlight someone at Public Works with that to say, are we going to check this out? Because that does seem to be the regular, beside the garbage bins, those recycling bins seem to be left behind a lot. But as far as what businesses put out, Megan, you might know better. I don't have a business on Main Street, so but I thought if you had recycling and you needed more than one gray bin or one blue bin to put it in, you could just ask for more and they would just pick them up.
Yeah, I actually haven't needed like more than one bin until I took over the tin roof. And it's actually been something that I've been curious about too, because I mean, I am creating more recycle waste. And do you know what I've honestly been doing instead of recycling is just taking it to the bonfire pit and burning it. Just because like I don't really know, and mostly it's kind of it's not a thing that's like really clear to a lot of business owners, I don't think. And I think that at least for me, I'd rather just not have it sitting out front because I don't really have anywhere to bring it back into. So I just go to my friend's farm and deal with it.
So it might be an issue for the DBIA because this was a big sign stuck on the desk, and it doesn't look very friendly. Customers coming in or to somebody thinking about bringing a business here or something like that. It just looked, like I guess that was a service that they provided with their customers. We'll take that, all that stuff off your hands. I understand that people can just go home and recycle it as well.
Yeah.
But if it's something that is a problem to businesses. It did say because of the, the new regulations, new recycling. I'm sure it said municipal.
Yeah.
But it might be something that needs to be clarified.
So would you like me then, Libby, to go before the DBIA and see what other businesses have done, or maybe if they've had more recycle bins added and whatnot, or?
Yeah, well, there just seems to be some confusion over it, if this is the case, that, I was hoping someone would say, oh, yes, this is a new regulation and this is what you do with excess or something. So obviously it needs some clarity. So I just thought that might be an issue to help businesses and to also foster more, recycling, which is certainly something that we all want to do. So I'll leave it in your hands, and maybe you can let us know next time what's happening. Yeah.
But definitely to clarify, Libby, it is a county issue. It's
the
municipality doesn't regulate. As far as I know.
Yeah,
It's
and I
all the
didn't
recycling.
get into it with her because I was just shopping, and it started playing on my mind afterwards. Like, why would that even be? So I'll just leave it with you to see if that's an issue with other businesses, or if I just happened in the one business that had an issue with it. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions on the downtown before we move on to Laura's very first update? Is that right, Laura? Any other questions? Okay, so we'll move on to Chamber of Commerce update with Laura.
Hi. So yeah, sorry, this is my first time getting in. I almost made it to the last one, and then I have no idea what happened to the link. So I'm glad to be here. I'm still working on maintaining all of Sherry's previous relationships with partners, etc. Kind of working my way down her list. I have a few small updates. We hired our summer student, so she's more of a fall student because I only just started at the end of April. So she will be working more tourism focused. Our hope is that we can open up the booth down at Presqu'île and have her really active in there. She's really spunky and she's kind of artistic. So we're kind of toying with the idea of bright and crammy local building, coloring pages, activities for kids, history ideas, etc. And then she's also here to help me kind of take over data entry help. When I got here, I noticed there was a lot of data entry that needed to be recorded for future ideas. So she's going to help me with that, so I can make work on the chamber social media presence much stronger. That's definitely a goal of mine. And the chamber is now a part of a group with the other chambers of Northumberland. We're working on some really exciting grant money, funding money ideas for marketing and tourism. If that goes through, that will be quite huge. Nancy at Trent Hills Chamber, she is the lead on that, so she's kind of taking us all under her wing. And we should have more information on that by the end of the month. And then if that all goes well, I'll be working with most of you guys to help put some money into some ideas. I'm also part of the Small Business Working Group to stay connected with local teams, initiatives, etc. Another thing that's exciting, and if we can all work together, we can maybe pull out of this pandemic remotely unscathed. And then within just the chamber itself, Bobby, our president, and Kristen are working on some fall funding ideas, because we will not have a larger award ceremony as Sherry has planned in the past. It's still going to be digital this year. And the golf tournament, we didn't feel right even trying to start that, because the golf season's already only getting like half a season. So we just want to let them have a chance to get back on their feet, and then next year we can plan for a regularly scheduled golf tournament. Personally, what I want to focus on is restaurants. We don't have any freestanding restaurants in our chamber, and I feel like Brighton has a lot of them, and a lot of really, really good ones. And even in Crammy now, we're getting some brand new ones like Kim and Sam Wham Bam Burger. And your Brighton Bites idea is so fantastic. I would love if there were more restaurants in the chamber, so we can kind of double the exposure and double the help there. So that's just something that is in the back of my head to work for in the next year. And oh, my last one is I have quite a few outside businesses asking for the Brighton Crammy Discovery Guides. So I'm working with Ben on getting them shipped out. I don't know how much help that will be, but I've already had several requests for 75 to 100 guides. So hopefully we'll get a nice chunk of exposure there. And yeah, that's all I have right now.
Okay, well, thanks, Laura. Sounds like you've jumped in with both feet, and we
Me too.
appreciate the update. And we look forward to you continuing to be a part of this committee. It's awesome. And are there any questions for Laura? That must mean you gave a good report, Laura. Okay, we'll move on to correspondence. Ben, I don't think we have any, do we? No, okay. Is there any new business? Yes, Jessica. You need to unmute.
So Libby, I know we spoke about it earlier, but I checked with Candace and we do need to have a mover and a seconder for those friendly amendments. Can you go back to that? Libby, I think you need to unmute now.
Sorry about that. So the friendly amendments are the disclosure of pecuniary interest by the mayor, given his employment by Miracle Inc. and the Brighton Beacon is published by that company. So if I could have a mover to accept both of those friendly, what do we call them? Friendly amendments. So Councillor Rowley, and a seconder, please. I'll second. Okay, thank you, Jessica. Is there anything else?
No, I'm good now.
Okay, no further business. So the next meeting date, Ben and I had a very brief chat before the meeting and wondered if we could possibly put September up as the next meeting date would be September the 2nd. Any comments on that? Everybody's muted, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. We're into the thickest year, so early September works.
Okay. All right, so September 2nd is the next meeting. And if we could have a mover to adjourn this meeting. Emily and Megan, thank you. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you. Have a great
Bye-bye.
day.
You too.